You are standing in a Cretaceous floodplain. The air is thick, humid, choking, and then you hear it. A sound so low it does not just reach your ears, it vibrates your rib cage. 30 hertz. That's deep into the infrasound range, the lower limit of human hearing. You do not just hear it, you feel it in your bones. It's not a roar, it's not a scream, it's something worse, a biological foghorn echoing across miles of ancient swampland, announcing that something massive is out there. But here's the twist. This is not a predator. This is an herbivore. And the thing making that sound, it's not even using vocal cords. It's using a trombone growing out of its skull. Welcome to the nightmare of Parasaurolophus, the musician of the Mesozoic. Parasaurolophus was not just another duck-billed dinosaur. Sure, it was 31 feet long, weighed up to 2.8 tons, and could sprint at 30 miles per hour on 2 legs when panicked. But what set it apart, what made it genuinely alien, was the crest. That tubular structure rising from the back of its head, not for show, not for thermoregulation, not a snorkel despite what old textbooks claimed. That hypothesis is dead and buried. No, the crest was a resonance chamber, a hollow, bony instrument formed primarily from the premaxillar bone with internal nasal passages that looped and curved like the tubing of a brass instrument. Air traveled through this maze before exiting, and the shape of those passages determined the pitch. The adult crest could reach 6 feet long, taller than a grown human. The total skull length, including the crest, stretched to over 5 feet. And when Parasaurolophus exhaled through that structure, it did not honk, it bellowed. Low resonant haunting. Scientists have compared the reconstructed sound to a crumhorn, a Renaissance wind instrument. Others say it's more like a hunting horn. Either way, it was loud. And here's the thing that keeps paleontologists up at night. We still do not know if they had vocal cords. The fossil record gives us the bone, the instrument itself, but soft tissue does not fossilize well. So we do not know if Parasaurolophus had a syrinx or larynx-like structures or anything resembling vocal cords. The computer simulations showing those resonant frequencies, they are based on the shape of the crest alone, assuming only passive airflow and resonance. If they did have vocal anatomy, the sound could have been entirely different, louder, more complex, maybe even modulated, capable of carrying information like individual identity, emotional state, or location. Which means the most terrifying possibility, what we have reconstructed, might be the minimum of what this animal could produce. Imagine hearing that sound in the dark. Not knowing what made it, not knowing if it's one animal or 50, not knowing if it's calling to its herd or calling for its herd because something just attacked. But the crest was not just an adult feature. That's the part that makes this even stranger. In most dinosaurs, with display structures, horns, frills, crests, the ornaments do not show up until sexual maturity. They are badges of adulthood, tools for attracting mates or intimidating rivals. Not Parasaurolophus. A fossil specimen nicknamed Joe Ram 14,000 shows a juvenile less than 1 year old already sporting a miniature version of the crest. The skull was only 25% the size of an adult's, but the crest was there low crescent shaped and functional. This means the crest was not just for mating displays, it was a survival tool from birth. Baby Parasaurolophus needed to communicate with the herd immediately to stay safe, to avoid getting lost, to signal distress. But here's the problem, we do not have fossils of teenagers. We have Joe the baby, we have full-sized adults. But the intermediate stages, the awkward adolescent years, when the crest was growing, when the sound was changing from a juvenile chirp to that bone-rattling adult bellow, are completely missing from the fossil record. Yet despite these finds, the exact nature of their soft tissues remains a ghost in the machine. We have the instrument, we are missing the musician's technique. Let's reconstruct the feeding behavior, because this is where Parasaurolophus gets genuinely bizarre. You'd expect an herbivore this size to just munch leaves, right? Graze peacefully through cycad forests, nip ferns, move on. Wrong. Fossilized feces, coprolites, show that Parasaurolophus ate rotting wood, and not just wood crustaceans, crabs, shrimp, small arthropods hiding inside the decaying logs. Why likely seasonal protein and calcium supplementation. During certain times of the year, plant material alone was not enough, so they'd use their powerful jaws, which functioned like bolt cutters, to snap through branches, then strip bark and splinter dead wood to get at the invertebrates inside. Picture this, a 9-meter-long dinosaur head lowered, crunching through a log like it's a breadstick, pulling out fistfuls of squirming crustaceans. And those jaws, recent research suggests they did not just chew up and down. The lower jaw could rotate along its length, while the upper jaw stayed still, a grinding, twisting motion that pulverized even tough plant matter. The older idea that the upper jaw flexed outward plurikinesis has been largely replaced by this mandibular rotation model. The teeth themselves formed tight batteries in the back of the mouth. Not just a few dozen like modern herbivores, we are talking hundreds of interlocking teeth packed so densely they formed continuous grinding surfaces called dental batteries. Each tooth slotted perfectly against its neighbors, creating a living cheese grater that never wore out. As the front teeth ground down from use, new ones pushed up from below a conveyor belt of enamel designed to pulverize wood fiber that would destroy any mammal's jaw in days. This is how you eat rotting logs for a living. But the weirdest detail, the feet. Joe's fossilized skin shows something genuinely alien. The soles of Parasaurolophus feet had no scales, no claws. Instead, they were completely covered in tiny tubercles, perfectly round bumps, each about 2 millimeters in diameter, packed together like the dimpled surface of a basketball. This was not random texture. This was precision engineering for swampland survival. Each tubercle increased surface area and grip on slick mud without sinking, like nature's version of traction pads designed tens of millions of years before humans invented basketball shoes. We do not know if this texture extended up the leg or if it was exclusive to weight-bearing surfaces. But it's one of those small, strange anatomical details that reminds you these were not just big lizards. They were alien. Now let's talk about the controversy that's been raging since the 1920s. There are fossils of Parasaurolophus with short crests, stubby, curved, nothing like the dramatic tube we usually picture. For decades, paleontologists assumed these were either females or juveniles of the long-crested species P. walkeri or P. tubicin. The idea made sense: sexual dimorphism. Males get the big showy crest, females get a smaller version, case closed. Except it was not. In 2021, a team led by Gates analyzed the short-crested specimens and concluded they were not females, they were not juveniles. They were a separate species entirely, Parasaurolophus cirtocristatus. The evidence: skull structure differences that go beyond size. Stratigraphic separation, different layers, different time periods. And most damning, the short-crested individuals were not just smaller overall. Their crests were fundamentally differently shaped, even accounting for growth stages. So now we are looking at a potential scenario where multiple species of Parasaurolophus coexisted, each with its own signature sound. Different trombone designs equals different calls, maybe even different languages. Or maybe the old guard is right and it's all one sexually dimorphic species with a ton of individual variation. Science still does not know. And honestly, that makes it scarier. One adult specimen shows something incredible: a healed injury on the vertebrae of the lower back. For years, paleontologists thought this depression in the bone was an attachment point for a skin membrane connecting the crest to the body like some kind of fleshy sail. Dramatic reconstructions showed Parasaurolophus with webbed crests, flags of skin stretching down the neck. Turns out, nope, that's a wound. Something heavy, most likely a falling tree, slammed into this animal's spine with enough force to dent the bone. And then the bone healed. The dinosaur lived through it, kept walking, kept eating, kept calling to the herd. Think about that level of durability. A multi-ton impact to the spine, survived. These were not fragile museum pieces. They were built to endure the violence of a world where 40-foot predators like Albertosaurus prowled the same forests. But surviving was not just about toughness, it was about communication. Here's what we know for certain. The crest was hollow. Air passed through it. Resonance occurred. A sound was produced. Here's what we do not know. Did individuals have unique voices? Could they recognize each other by sound alone? Did different populations develop regional dialects the way modern whales do? Could they produce harmonic overtones, layering multiple frequencies at once? And the big one, what was the acoustic range? Computer models suggest they could produce sounds around 800 hertz, roughly the pitch of a trombone or trumpet, but their massive resonance chambers likely allowed them to drop into much deeper rumbling tones, possibly as low as 30 to 50 hertz, well into the infrasound range that modern elephants use. Low-frequency sounds travel for miles without being absorbed by vegetation, perfect for long-distance communication in dense Cretaceous forests. But here's where it gets interesting. What if those sounds were not just for talking? Modern elephants use low-frequency calls to coordinate herds across savannas, but they also use them to intimidate rivals. The infrasound vibrations below 20 hertz can literally shake the chest cavity of nearby animals, triggering instinctive unease, even when the sound itself is barely audible. Could Parasaurolophus have weaponized their crest the same way? Not just calling the herd, but broadcasting a low-frequency warning that rattled the rib cages of approaching Albertosaurus or juvenile tyrannosaurs. A biological deterrent that said, I'm here, I'm massive, and I'm not alone. Think about it, you are a mid-sized predator stalking through Cretaceous twilight. Suddenly, your chest starts vibrating. You cannot see what's making the sound, but you can feel it in your bones. Do you keep hunting, or do you back off and find easier prey? We'll never know if they actually used it this way. But the physics checks out. And in a world where survival meant more than just running fast, having a built-in sonic deterrent would have been one hell of an evolutionary advantage. The truth is buried with them, because soft tissue does not fossilize, because despite the discovery of baby Joe, we are still missing the full developmental picture, because the fossil record is a strobe light flickering in a dark room and we only see fragments. But maybe that's fitting, because the scariest sounds are always the ones you cannot quite place. And speaking of things we can barely piece together, but here's something that makes the Parasaurolophus story even stranger. They were not just North American. In the 1970s, Russian and Chinese paleontologists discovered fragmentary fossils in northeastern China skull bones belonging to a hadrosaur with a massive tubular crest. They named it Tyrannosaurus giayenensis. And when Western scientists finally got to examine the material decades later, they realized something shocking. Tyrannosaurus looked almost identical to Parasaurolophus. Same crest architecture, same body plan, so similar that it sparked a debate about convergent evolution. If that's true, it means the trombone-headed design was so effective that nature built it twice. In Asia, a distinct cousin called Tyrannosaurus evolved a nearly identical crest, 2 continents, 2 different genera, but one hauntingly similar acoustic solution echoing across forests separated by thousands of miles. We still do not know if they sounded the same. We do not know if Asian and American populations could have recognized each other's calls. But the fact that this design, this bizarre tuber skull experiment, worked well enough to colonize 2 hemispheres that tells you something about how effective it was. Parasaurolophus vanished from the fossil record around 73 million years ago, long before the asteroid that ended the Age of Dinosaurs. But for millions of years, their haunting calls defined the Cretaceous soundscape. But for millions of years before that, they were not the most common dinosaurs of their time. Actually, they were rare gems among the hadrosaurs, but they were survivors, creatures that evolutionary design pushed to the acoustic limit. And that crest, the trombone skull, the evolutionary kazoo, remains one of the strangest things the Mesozoic ever produced. Thanks for watching, and until next time on AncientDoc.